Hey everyone, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
Fuego here.
Here to review the second episode of Creepshow. Yes, we were very high off of the first episode. We both, I enjoyed both stories very much. Fuego liked the first one more than the second one, but we got a comment pretty quickly when the new one released on our other review saying, second episode's nowhere near as good. And unfortunately, that did bear out.
Yes, no qualms about that.
I'll go ahead and talk about the first one, because I don't even really remember the second. Oh, yeah, DJ Qualls. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first one is basically a 25-minute version of Dog Soldiers done not as well.
Yeah.
It's a group of soldiers fighting in World War II, was it?
Correct. You got some Nazi antagonists going down.
Antagonists, and when the Americans... they are on the run from this particular battalion or group or whatever the hell you want to call them of Nazi soldiers, and they hide out in this little shed in an area where there's literally signs that say, you know, beware of werewolves, essentially.
Face and everything on the markings.
Exactly. And so they find a girl inside this that's like locked up in the makeshift cell that they have in this building, and it turns into like it turns out that she was a werewolf, and they're cornered by this whole Nazi regime, and so their only way out is to try and change. And that's what happens.
Too much, yeah. And it is only 20-something minutes, remember?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's not much else we can really say.
It was not good. I don't know if it just tried to cram too much into the 25-minute segment, and you just couldn't. It had to move to the next thing, so you couldn't really grab onto anything and really get into it, you know? But, yeah, I don't know. What were your thoughts on it?
No memorable characters, unfortunately. Once we finally got to the transformation aspects, they did not look very good. The gore was not, like, crazy prevalent like I would expect from something of this. I mean, it was there, but it just didn't look that masterfully done.
Well, and they did three different... one interesting thing is that they did the three different versions of werewolves.
They did.
They did the Wolfman werewolf, they did the stand-up werewolf, and then they did the American werewolf, all fours werewolf.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting, but they didn't really do that much with those werewolves.
No, and I mean, being so contained, and I don't know, this is something that I think with like a better script and a larger runtime, they could have expanded it and made it more interesting.
Yeah.
As a whole, it just made me want to go like throw out the werewolves and watch like Overlord, or if I want to, you know, watch something with werewolves in it, obviously Dog Soldiers is solid in that regard. But yeah, Overlord, as far as a World War II set horror movie with kind of a creature sort of bit to it, I thought that was significantly superior to this. It looked kind of cheap too, I have to say.
It did look cheap, yeah.
It looked kind of made for TV in that regard, which is the one thing that Tales from the Crypt often did have higher, better budgets. I'm not sure how much Shudder is actually, you know, giving them for these and whatnot, but I still do contend that I felt like the production values were better on the first two segments in episode 1. So
I agree, and I'll tell you something that's starting to bother me now that I kind of let slip the first time because it was done differently. Like, we're obviously used to the Crypt Keeper for Tales from the Crypt.
I'm so with you if you're going to say what I think
the Creepshow Creeper is like, I was like, oh cool, it's the Creeper, and they're doing comic book panels and everything, but that's it. Like, they're not giving him any personality. They're not putting any context to the places they're giving him, and he's just like and like that's it. That's not engaging at all. It's not a good way to introduce stories. It's not a good wraparound. It's I'm getting tired of it, and I'm only at episode 2.
I just thought he looked kind of like clunky and not very. I mean, hey, the Crypt Keeper was a puppet, and I feel like he looks better than what we're getting from this. That I'm honestly wondering if it is somebody in a suit, at least for certain portions with the hands.
The hands, yeah,
and everything. Obviously,
but no, the head is a puppet. It's an animatronic.
Yeah, and there is too much of a slickness to the animation, well, the actual comic book panels, I guess, that we cut back and forth to. There was kind of a grainy, cool, like late 70s, early 80s, almost like, I don't know, the type of animation we saw at the time, whether it was like Lord of the Rings and Return of the King or Wizards and stuff like that. That sort of 80s animated style, I felt lent itself so much better to the pulpy aspect of this material, and this just looks too slick. It looks like a web comic as opposed to, you know, something of that more natural variety. So that's another thing that in episode 2, I like the cutting back and forth. I like the fact that they, especially in the werewolf episode, incorporated that red and green lighting like you saw in I mean, most notably the Father's Day installment of the original Creepshow film. But then I felt like they were leaning on it too much because they did it a ton in both episodes compared to in the previous episode. So I feel like, you know, depending on who is directing and what story they're putting together, this is probably going to be as uneven as a lot of anthologies become over time. You know, there's some installments that blow you away and others where you're just like, okay, that's forgettable. I probably never need to watch that again.
True.
So,
so why don't you tackle the second story?
Yeah. Second story is called The Finger, and this one is DJ Qualls.
DJ Qualls, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was in a film called The New Guy, and then I remember he hit... Ironically, as far as werewolf connections go, wasn't that what he was on Supernatural, if I remember correctly? Yeah, he totally was. So that's kind of funny. He's not in the previous episode, but in this one, he's this weird guy who has gone through a divorce. He's kind of a techie, and he's down and out with his ex-wife.
He's a hoarder,
children.
too.
He's a hoarder as well. Yeah, most definitely, which is why he comes across this like weird, bony-looking little finger on the side of the road as he's walking around in L.A., which he does contend early on. He's like, nobody walks in L.A., but I walk in LA.
I'm the guy that walks in LA.
I'm the guy who walks around in LA. And so he picks up this weird bony finger and he's looking at it and he thinks it's from an animal and he's looking at like different, you know, appendages and trying to like make some sort of classification and unable to do that. And so over time the finger starts to grow and it goes from a finger to like starting to become a hand and then an arm, and it ends up becoming a creature that his name is Bob, I want to say.
He names it Bob, yeah. So dumb.
Yeah, he's a charmer in the role, but the script is really lame. But his like he's breaking the fourth wall throughout the entirety of it. He's talking to the audience, and I liked his character, but there's not really anything unexpected going down. It does get a little bloody near the end, especially as you find out what's really transpiring, and it does leave you wondering, is it or isn't it?
Well, the interesting thing is that the creature kind of becomes a pet to him.
Oh yeah.
So that's the different thing. Yeah, eating popcorn and that's the thing. Like, you really had to either let go of the fact that the creature looks kind of silly in the practical form.
Oh, big time.
And even worse in the digital form, but it was still entertaining enough. It was just silly, but
this felt like one of the stupider Tales from the Crypt episodes where it was definitely trying to be more comedic as opposed to frightening, and I was less a fan of those in most regards, but I mean I at least was more amused by this than the werewolf one, even if neither were particularly memorable.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
I
mean,
much else
to say on this. DJ Qualls did a good job, but otherwise, it was just a real lackluster episode, unfortunately, guys. So we're not going to waste too much more time on this. We have a lot to talk about today, so we'll go ahead and end that review for episode 2 here. We will be back next week with episode 3, our thoughts on that. So let us know in the comments down below, what are you thinking of Tales from the Dark Side? What are you thinking of Creepshow? Well, because we have to review that next, so we'll do that next.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're thinking of the Shudder series Creepshow. While you're down there, click the like button if you enjoyed the review, and subscribe. Click that notification bell if you want to make sure you don't miss further Creepshow reviews. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias up in Jaime and Fuego.
Thank you very much to all of our patrons, and remember, stay scared.